The forgotten bookmark Naomi Reed ran her fingers along the spines of used books, breathing in the comforting scent of aged paper that filled the cramped aisles of Cornerstone books. Outside, autumn rain tapped against the windows, creating the perfect backdrop for her Saturday afternoon ritual. This tiny bookshop, wedged between a laundromat and a Thai restaurant, had become her sanctuary in the 3 years since moving to Portland. "Found anything worth rescuing today?" called Mr. Finley, the white-haired owner who seemed as much a fixture as the creaking wooden shelves. "Still hunting," Naomi replied, adjusting her tortoiseshell glasses. Her apartment already overflowed with books, a fact her roommate Josephine frequently bemoaned, but Naomi couldn't help herself. Each book represented a world she hadn't yet explored. She paused at a weathered copy of The Sea in Silence, and a novel she'd meant to read for years. When she opened it, a handmade bookmark slipped out and fluttered to the floor. It was crafted from thick, cream-colored paper, with pressed lavender flowers embedded within. Written in an elegant, slanting script was a quote: "The right words find us precisely when we need them most." Naomi smiled, turning the bookmark over in her hands. Someone had created this with care, only to leave it behind. She considered asking Mr. Finley if anyone had come looking for it, but then slipped it back between the pages. Bookmarks were always getting left behind. It wasn't anything special. She purchased the novel along with 2 other books, never noticing the faded phone number written in tiny script on the bookmark's back corner. That evening, curled on her window seat while rain continued its gentle percussion, Naomi began reading. The bookmark rested on her nightstand, forgotten as she lost herself in the story. Outside her 3rd-floor apartment, the city lights blurred through raindrops, creating a watercolor landscape of urban life. 3 blocks away, Ethan Desai closed his laptop and rubbed his eyes. Another evening of freelance graphic design work completed, another deadline met. His apartment felt particularly empty tonight. On his desk sat a stack of handmade bookmarks, identical to the one Naomi had found, waiting to be left in books around the city. It had been his therapist's suggestion 6 months ago. Create something meaningful and send it into the world without expectation. After his fiancée Becca had ended their engagement last year, claiming they'd grown in different directions, Ethan had struggled to feel connected to anything. The bookmarks were his way of reaching out, each with his number discreetly written on the back. Not that anyone had ever called. Most people probably tossed them, or like Naomi, never noticed the invitation to connect. "Maybe it's time to try something new," he murmured to his cat Hemingway, who watched him with unblinking yellow eyes from atop the bookshelf. Neither Naomi nor Ethan realized that night how the universe had already set their collision course, beginning with a bookmark that carried more than just a placeholder for words on a page. Parallel. Live's Ethan's morning routine began precisely at 6:30 a.m. He jogged through Washington Park as dawn painted the sky in watercolor hues, passing the rose garden where an early rising woman sketched in a notebook. He never noticed it was Naomi, who found the morning light perfect for drawing the botanical illustrations that supplemented her income as a part-time librarian. Their city was large enough to get lost in, yet small enough that coincidences became commonplace. They shopped at the same farmer's market on Sundays, Ethan arriving just as Naomi left with her canvas tote filled with heirloom tomatoes and locally made honey. They frequented the same coffee shop, Percolate, though Ethan came for afternoon creativity boosts while Naomi started her days there, often leaving exactly 30 minutes before he arrived. "Your usual Ethan?" asked Daniela, the barista with sleeve tattoos and an encyclopedic memory for customer preferences. "Please. Deadline day," he replied, settling into the corner table that still held the lingering warmth of Naomi's laptop. Sometimes he'd find a stray bobby pin or a forgotten receipt with a doodle of intertwining branches, evidence of the stranger who'd occupied his favorite spot earlier. Ethan's design business was finally gaining traction after a year of scraping. But today he was finalizing branding for a local brewery, trying to capture the essence of Pacific Northwest forests in a logo that wouldn't look like every other craft beer label. His phone buzzed with a text from his sister Priya. "Did you call?" "Mom, it's her birthday." He cursed under his breath, the date having completely escaped him. Since the breakup, family obligations slipped through the cracks of his attention. He'd become someone who forgot birthdays and missed Sunday dinners, a person his former self wouldn't recognize. Meanwhile, Naomi paced nervously outside the downtown public library, rehearsing her pitch for the children's literacy program she'd developed. After 3 years of shelving books and helping patrons find obscure titles, she was ready for more responsibility. "You've got this," whispered Josephine, who'd met her for moral support during lunch. "They'd be idiots not to greenlight your proposal." Inside her tote bag, the sea in silence waited with the bookmark faithfully keeping her place, the phone number still unnoticed. The library board approved Naomi's program unanimously. That evening, she celebrated at Riverside Brewing, the very company whose logo Ethan had finished designing that afternoon. She sat beneath his new forest-inspired sign, never connecting it to the man who stood just outside, taking a phone call from his mother to wish her happy birthday before heading home. Autumn faded to winter. Ethan left more bookmarks in more books, wondering if his quiet rebellion against disconnection made any difference. Naomi's literacy program flourished, bringing her a sense of purpose that had eluded her since college. They remained cosmically connected yet physically separate. There lives a study in near misses and parallel journeys. But the universe, having already placed the bookmark in motion, was patient. The convergence of their separate stories required precise timing, and winter would need to yield to spring before the next chapter could unfold. The literary festival spring arrived with Portland's annual Words Bloom Literary Festival, transforming the downtown park into a maze of white tents, each dedicated to different aspects of the written word. Volunteers in emerald green shirts scurried between venues, helping authors and attendees navigate the weekend-long celebration of literature. Naomi adjusted her volunteer badge, scanning her assignment sheet. The children's literacy program she'd launched had earned recognition, leading festival organizers to invite her to coordinate the poetry reading stage. She'd spent weeks preparing, reaching out to local poets and scheduling performances that would appeal to diverse audiences. "Excuse me, is this where I'm supposed to check in?" A deep voice interrupted her thoughts. She turned to find a man with dark curly hair, eyes the color of oversteeped tea, and the same emerald volunteer shirt she wore. Something about him seemed vaguely familiar, though she couldn't place why. "That depends on your assignment," she replied, noting the camera bag slung over his shoulder. "Poetry stage photographer?" He extended his hand. "Ethan Desai." Naomi felt a flutter of annoyance. "I specifically requested someone with poetry reading experience. Photography is important, but I need someone who understands the flow and feeling of spoken word." Ethan's smile faltered. "I actually majored in English before switching to design. I've been to more poetry slams than I can count." He patted his camera bag. "This is just how I pay bills now." "I'm sorry," Naomi said, realizing her abruptness. "We've had some last-minute changes. I'm Naomi Reed, stage coordinator." The morning proceeded in awkward efficiency as they prepared the venue. Naomi arranged chairs in a semicircle rather than traditional rows, while Ethan tested lighting angles. They worked around each other like planets in separate orbits, professional, but distant. During the lunch break, disaster struck when their first scheduled poet called, stranded by car trouble. The audience would arrive in 30 minutes expecting to hear Gabriela Martinez's powerful verses about immigrant experiences. "We need a replacement," Naomi murmured, scrolling frantically through contacts. "What about open mic?" Ethan suggested. "I've seen it save events before. That's not the caliber this festival expects," Naomi snapped, then immediately regretted her tone. "I'm sorry. Again. I just want everything to be perfect." "Perfect is the enemy of good," Ethan said quietly. "Sometimes the unexpected creates the most memorable moments." Something in his words resonated with her. They reminded her of the bookmark she'd found months ago. Before she could respond, her phone buzzed with another cancellation. "Fine," she conceded. "Open mic it is." What followed surprised them both. Festival attendees, professors, teenagers, retirees, baristas, stepped forward with poems they'd written or memorized. Ethan captured photographs that somehow translated spoken emotion into visual storytelling while Naomi facilitated with growing enthusiasm. When an elderly man forgot his lines midway through Wordsworth's Daffodils, Naomi seamlessly joined him, their voices blending until his memory returned. Ethan lowered his camera, watching her with newfound appreciation. As afternoon faded to evening, the improvised poetry session became the festival's unexpected highlight. People lingered afterward, discussing verses and exchanging contact information. That was, Naomi began, searching for the right word. Perfect, Ethan suggested with a smile. She laughed, the first genuine laugh he'd heard from her. Unexpectedly, good. They dismantled the stage in companionable conversation, discovering shared appreciation for obscure poets and heated disagreement about whether audiobooks counted as real reading. When Ethan mentioned his favorite coffee shop was Percolate, Naomi's eyes widened. I go there almost every morning, she said. I'm there most afternoons, he replied. As dusk settled over the festival grounds, they exchanged phone numbers. Ironic, given that his number had been in her possession for months, though neither knew it yet. Same time tomorrow? Ethan asked as they parted ways at the bus stop. Tomorrow, Naomi confirmed, wondering why meeting someone new could feel so much like reconnecting with someone familiar. Connections revealed. The second day of the literary festival passed in a blur of poetry, laughter, and collaborative problem-solving. Naomi and Ethan moved together like dancers who'd rehearsed for months rather than strangers who'd met just yesterday. When the festival concluded, they exchanged a lingering goodbye, promising to meet at Percolate the following week. Back home, Naomi felt restless. Her apartment seemed different somehow, as if meeting Ethan had shifted something fundamental in her perception. She decided to organize her overflowing bookshelf, a task she'd postponed for months. Book by book, she sorted through her collection. Novels to keep, books to donate, volumes to lend to friends. When she reached The Sea in Silence, the bookmark slipped out once again. She picked it up, admiring the pressed lavender and elegant script. On impulse, she turned it over, noticing for the first time the faded numbers in the corner. A phone number. Her heart quickened as she recognized the first few digits. They matched Ethan's number, which she'd entered into her phone just yesterday. With trembling fingers, she compared them. They were identical. This can't be, she whispered to her empty apartment. She called him immediately. The bookmark with pressed lavender and a quote about words finding us. Was that yours? A pause. You found one of my bookmarks. His voice held wonder and disbelief. I've been leaving them in used books around the city for months. No one has ever called. I never saw the number until today, Naomi admitted. But I've had it since autumn. It was in that copy of The Sea in Silence at Cornerstone Books. My favorite bookshop, he said softly. Wait, you've had my bookmark all this time? They met at Riverside Brewing an hour later, both buzzing with the strange electricity of discovery. Seated beneath the forest logo Ethan had designed, they began untangling the web of coincidences that had connected them long before they'd formally met. I sketch at Washington Park every Tuesday morning, Naomi said. I jog there. Same time. Ethan shook his head in amazement. And Percolate. Daniela told me someone always sits at my favorite table right before I arrive. With the view of the street and the exposed brick wall, that's my spot. They traded revelations like gifts, how they'd attended the same underground concert last winter but stood at opposite ends of the venue. How Naomi had almost adopted a gray tabby from the shelter where Hemingway had lived. How Ethan had once stood behind her in line at the farmer's market, admiring her botanical illustrations without knowing their creator. What were the odds? Naomi wondered, tracing the condensation on her glass. Astronomical, Ethan replied. Unless the universe was insisting, she finished. Later, walking along the waterfront under a canopy of stars, they discussed the bookmark that had waited patiently for its message to be fully received. Why did you start making them? Naomi asked. Ethan explained about his broken engagement, The disconnection he'd felt, his therapist's suggestion. I guess I was trying to reach out to someone, anyone, who might understand. Naomi linked her arm through his. The right words find us precisely when we need them most. My words found you, he said. They just needed time to be heard. New chapters summer unfurled across Portland, bringing languid evenings and possibilities that seemed to stretch like the longer days. Naomi and Ethan's relationship blossomed alongside the season's flowers. Coffee meetings became dinner dates, which evolved into weekend adventures exploring hidden corners of the city they both loved, yet had experienced separately for so long. Naomi's literacy program expanded beyond the library into community centers across the county. Ethan's design business flourished, his bookmark-inspired logo work catching the attention of publishers and authors nationwide. They moved through the world as individuals yet increasingly as a unit, their separate stories now consciously intertwined. Then came the email that disrupted their carefully constructed harmony. The Boston Children's Literary Foundation wants me as their program director, Naomi announced one evening as they picnicked in Peninsula Park. Roses bloomed around them, their scent mingling with the distant laughter of children. It's everything I've worked toward. Ethan's expression remained carefully neutral as he absorbed her words. When would you start? September, 6 weeks from now. The distance stretched between them, not just the physical miles that would separate Portland from Boston, but the immeasurable space of possibility and loss. You have to take it, Ethan said finally, his voice steady despite the uncertainty roiling beneath. This is your dream. Naomi studied his face, searching for resentment but finding only genuine support. What about us? After everything the universe did to bring us together. Maybe the universe wasn't trying to make us inseparable, Ethan suggested, reaching for her hand. Maybe it was showing us that connection doesn't depend on proximity. The following weeks passed in a bittersweet blur of preparations. Naomi packed her apartment while Ethan helped, each book a reminder of the literary trail that had led them to each other. When they came across The Sea in Silence, they paused, holding it between them like a sacred object. I think you should keep it, Naomi said. It belongs with the bookmark's creator. No, Ethan replied. The book found you. The words inside it are part of your journey now. 3 days before her departure, Ethan presented Naomi with a parting gift, a handmade journal bound in leather the color of autumn leaves. Inside, he'd pressed lavender flowers between the pages and inscribed the first page. Distance is just another word for perspective. For your new stories, he explained, the ones you'll share with me across miles. You're not afraid? She asked. That we'll become strangers again? We were never strangers, Ethan said. Just characters who hadn't met in the same chapter, yet. On her last evening in Portland, they returned to Riverside Brewing. Sitting beneath the forest logo that had once marked their separate lives, they didn't speak of endings or goodbyes. Instead, they discussed the books they would read simultaneously across different time zones, the video calls that would bridge the continental divide, the holidays, when they would temporarily close the physical gap. Some stories don't need proximity, Naomi acknowledged, echoing his earlier wisdom. They just need commitment to turning the page together. As summer surrendered to autumn once more, they embraced not an ending but a continuation, a new chapter in a story that had begun long before they realized they were its protagonists, one that would continue unfolding across cities, seasons, and the spaces in between.